Hello, and welcome to another episode at The Informed Perspective. If this is your first time tuning in, it's brilliant to have you with us. This podcast is all about reimagining what community can look like in today's world while staying connected to the big global conversations that affect us all. As the name suggests, we're here to listen, properly listen, to different voices, different stories, different ways of thinking. And although a lot of what we do starts at local level, the ideas we explore often go so much further, sparking connection, understanding, and hopefully a bit of inspiration wherever you are. Today, we're digging into self-discovery as part of our Discovery and Exploration series. So far, we've spoken to a reserve astronaut, adventurers, even AI experts. But to close the series, we're turning the focus inward, because one of the biggest journeys any of us can take is getting to know ourselves. At the heart of The Informed Perspective is something we call Tween Talk. It's a safe space that we've created for 9-year-olds to 13-year-olds to share ideas, be heard, and connect with each other in meaningful ways. Those years, right at the start of puberty, are such a turning point. It's when kids begin figuring out who they are, what they care about, and how they fit into the world around them. They start comparing themselves with their peers, forming opinions separate from their family, and may begin exploring social media. They also start noticing the expectations being placed on them. And that's when the big questions kick in. Who am I? Where do I belong? What do I stand for? And how do I want to show up in the world? Self-discovery is actually cyclical, often resurfacing during major life transitions like divorce, parenthood, loss, or career changes, as well as in midlife and post-retirement. Midlife, in particular, is a common time for self-reflection. As children gain independence and our roles start to shift, many of us realize we've reached potential half-time. And that's when we begin to ask, what do I want from the next chapter? I've seen this happen to lots of people in their 40s, where I'm currently at myself, and beyond, whether they're men or women, making big career changes, picking up new hobbies, or finally carving out the time for themselves after years of focusing on others. It's often the first time in a long while where they really stop and ask, what do I need and what do I want now? The truth is, we are shaped over time by our families, our experiences, our environment. But those early influences can sometimes box us in. Without even realizing, we carry these old stories about on ourselves and they might not fit anymore. Over time, they can unconsciously create limitations, and that can hold back personal growth. But change is possible. In fact, it's often in the face of challenge or trauma in our lives that the journey of self-discovery may actually begin, when we're pushed out of our comfort zones, whether by choice or circumstance, and then we can experience profound transformation. These moments, while difficult, can serve as powerful catalysts for personal development, inviting us to redefine who we are and what truly matters. And here's something worth remembering. We don't stop growing as we get older. Our personalities aren't set in stone. There's actually research that shows that as we age, we tend to become more grounded, less reactive, and better at focusing on what really matters. Resilience turns into a bit of a superpower, and our emotional depth and wisdom only grow richer. Many older adults find fresh ways to navigate life's ups and downs, putting energy into meaningful relationships, setting goals that feel achievable, and keeping a positive outlook. Our emotional experiences often become deeper and more meaningful too. And that kind of emotional richness brings a lot of wisdom and really helps us to connect with others on a whole new level. Wouldn't it be great if we spent more time celebrating aging as a chance for continued growth and connection? And what if we all recognize the real benefits of community, a place that brings purpose, new friendship, but also opportunities to keep learning ourselves and to keep evolving? This kind of development, however, is not an easy thing. It's a lifelong task that unfolds. And we change, and as we do, it helps us understand ourselves. If we're honest, self-discovery takes commitment and discipline, and that also requires energy. Collins Dictionary defines self-discovery as the process of gaining understanding of oneself and one's motivations and needs. But if you ever tried it, you'll know it's really that simple because we're complex, we're full of emotions, contradictions, and stories. And ideas like higher consciousness can also sound a bit overwhelming or even out of reach. And let's be honest, do we all really have time for this kind of introspection? Is self-discovery actually a luxury, or is it essential to living a grounded, fulfilling life? Too often we might get caught up in the rush, lose sight of our values. But what if we slowed down enough to really ask ourselves those tough questions and actually listen? Are we living in a way that feels true to who we are? Are we honoring what matters, or just going through the motions? So, to help us explore this all, we've brought together a fantastic panel of guests who work at the crossroads of healing, growth, and transformation. And I can't wait to hear what they've got to say. And just before we launch in, I'm going to add a few little quotes just to get us thinking and widening our perspectives. Very famous quote, which I'm sure all of you know, from Aristotle: "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Marianne Williamson, the author of A Return to Love: "It takes courage to endure the sharp pains of self-discovery rather than choose to take the dull pain of unconsciousness that would last the rest of our lives." And Paul Coelho, author of The Alchemist: "Don't be afraid to wander. Sometimes getting lost is the best way to find yourself." And Mike Bayer, who's an American life coach: "You are your best self when you fully embrace who you are and stop trying to be someone else." Ralph Ellison, Ariana Huffington, author: "The journey towards self-discovery is life's greatest adventure." And finally, Ralph Waldo Emerson, a US essayist, said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be." So I'm going to pass over now to my lovely colleague Jenny, and she will introduce our guests today.
Thank you, Penny. I'm really excited about today's podcast because self-discovery is something I've been passionate about for years. And for everyone listening, whatever your approach to self-discovery is, it's out there. A lot of people are talking about it. So we're really excited to have such a broad panel on today to share their perspectives and hopefully resonate with each of you as listeners and give you some inspiration going forward. So Priya Nair is a certified life and brain coach based in Abu Dhabi. With a background in IT and academia, her personal journey through big life transitions like moving countries and motherhood led her to deeper work of self-awareness and healing. Today, she blends neuroscience, psychology, mindfulness, and lived experience to help others reframe limiting beliefs and reconnect with their true selves. Chantelle Botha is a global speaker, author, identity architect, and founder of Dragonfly. Known for her unapologetic authenticity, she helps women break free from societal expectations and step into their untamed sex factor, a powerful force of confidence, connection, and purpose. Having overcome addiction and adversity herself, Chantelle brings lived experience to her work, sparking transformation through fierce self-belief and bold authenticity. Darren Timms is a therapist, mentor, transformation coach, and best-selling author of the book, The Journey Back to Self. With a background that bridges high-performance sports and deep psychological work, Darren helps people move beyond the emotional patterns and mental blocks that hold them back. His approach combines psychology, NLP, and grounded honesty, always aiming to get to the root, not just the symptoms, for real, lasting change. And Macaulay Sutton is the founder of Arctic Alchemy, a performance and well-being brand blending ancient wisdom and modern science. As a certified Wim Hof method instructor and breathwork facilitator, he guides others through cold exposure, breathwork, and mindset training to build resilience from the inside out. In his own life, Macaulay knows that discipline is the highest form of self-love, a path to freedom, clarity, and deeper connection. So here we go.
Quite a panel this morning, Jenny. So I'm very excited to get into this, and hopefully we'll discover some things about ourselves today. I'm going to start off with you, Priya, if that's okay. Good morning, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've sort of touched on this previous to the podcast, that you've spoken about how you have come from an IT and academia background and have now found your way to healing and coaching. So what I wanted to ask you is, what invited your inward journey to begin? Yeah, what invited you to start that journey of self-exploration, and how did you begin to navigate that shift from problem solving with logic to healing through inner work?
Yeah, so I guess for me, it was not something that was drastic. It was like quiet nudges that just grew louder to the point where, I couldn't just avoid it or distract myself. So I think in all the different phases of my life, I was doing all the right things. Okay, like basically you'd call it like having the good life, good family. I was quite a high achiever at school, university, and then I had a good job. I had a good husband and children. But along the way, I mean, like in every phase, I just felt a kind of disconnect within me. Like there was something that was like a little off, you know? But I guess I was just really very busy with just doing everything, like, getting things done, working, parenting, and everything. You don't really question things. You just go on doing the same thing on autopilot. But I felt like I was getting a little bit uneasy with all that I was going through. Like everything on the outside seemed like it was all perfect, but on the inside, you know that there was something that was just off. So I guess for me, the big shift happened when I moved countries. When I was in my late 30s, I moved out of my comfort zone and I had my career break, and it was like parenting full time. And may I just add that prior to moving, about 3 years prior to moving, I started meditating. I started attending lots of spiritual discourses and doing meditation. So I kind of like got to hear myself a bit more, if I could say it that way. But it's just like I kept telling myself that, yeah, this is part of life, you just got to deal with it, not really addressing what I was feeling, because I couldn't put words to what I was actually feeling. So when I moved to the Middle East, to Oman, with all the changes, I didn't have my family there, friends, everything was new. And then my eldest daughter happens to be a bit of a strong-willed child. So that also kind of like pushed me even further. And I think that it just came to a point. I can't really like pinpoint on like when, but it just became a lot. Like I felt too much of a discomfort and I started really slowing down. Like, I just needed to understand what was going on within me. Like I couldn't intellectualize, I couldn't find logic to explain what I was going through. So the whole meditation process helped me to get really quiet within, like, to see what was showing up. And I guess I started stopping myself whenever I got triggered and I stopped looking at what was triggering me and more to what was within me that was getting triggered. I think that was the start of my whole self-discovery, because I think all the while I was so focused on everything outside of me that was causing that discomfort. Like, okay, my child is strong-willed and this is like that, and I'm not fitting in, and they are so different. And it was all about the externals. But when I started going inward, I started questioning, like, what is it within me that is being triggered? Because there must be something within me that's causing me to feel whatever that I'm feeling from the, like the reactions of others or what others are saying, because otherwise I wouldn't be feeling or the way I'm feeling. I wouldn't be reacting the way I'm reacting. And I guess that awareness that people can only be how they are and situations can only be how they are, but I have control over how I would like to respond. And I just basically didn't want to continue reacting, made all the difference. So I started lots of journaling and I continued with my meditation practices. And I started the first course, basically just to understand more about myself. But along the way, it really kind of like allowed me to articulate what it was like, what I was going through. And one course led to the other course. And before I knew it, I was just trying out with people, to help them whenever friends would say that they're having this or that and the other. And I started applying what I was learning and being trained for. I realized there were lots of changes that I could see in people. They were really gaining from what I was helping them with. And that's when I slowly shifted into saying that, yeah, okay, so I know what I went through. I know that there is different ways of looking at situations. It's not the way I was conditioned to see things, because I started questioning basically, like, who told me that I have to be angry for that situation? The answers were kind of like, it made me realize that, like, gosh, all these years I've just been like doing things based on not even questioning anything, just doing it on autopilot. So that was the start of like really getting a little bit more grounded. And I would say that this shift is not something that happens and it stops. It's a continuous process. I'm continuously peeling off layers of myself. I would say that it's like a continuous healing, unlearning, most importantly. There's so much to unlearn and relearn and to, just basically take off all the layers that you just were just put on you, and not you really, like not me really. So that was how I shifted from into self-discovery and feeling a lot more at peace. I guess logic helps you to survive, to do, to achieve and stuff like that. But for me personally, speaking for myself, I never felt really at ease or at peace. But with this whole process of discovering myself, the way I think, the way I respond, and just trying to align to my higher self, it's given me so much peace. And I can say that I thrive now. I don't survive, I thrive. And like, no, like in the beginning, I would say that anybody can just hold the remote on me and I'd either be emotional or something can just trigger me. But right now, I think I'm a lot more emotionally regulated. I respond rather than react, and just a sense of ease and peace, and no longer in a state of being afraid or pursuing things out of a feeling of lack or fear. It's more of passion and a knowing, being really grounded in my values, my passion, and just being me.
Yeah, I'm just really curious because I would like to know whether you think that it's often with the people that you're helping, whether that's fear that's getting in the way, that's where they're getting stuck on their journey to really discover themselves or to make progress. Where do you see people getting stuck?
I feel it's the beliefs and it's their experiences. They kind of conclude that, if they had this experience before, like the past equals the present and the future. So a lot that I uncover with the people I help are basically in terms of the beliefs and the conditioning. Because like coming from an Asian family, and I think a lot of the Asian kind of parenting, there's a lot on achieving and, being a certain way. And so if you do not conform to that stereotype, then you are looked at differently. And so people just sort of like, lose that drive, or they become so afraid that they are going to make mistakes again, or they're not going to be, they're just not enough, I would say. Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear you talk as well, Priya, because I think already what's so apparent is that, speaking on behalf of each of you, but we're talking about the self-discovery, but you've all naturally been on that journey, and that's inspired it because I'm hearing that the first self-discovery needs to be almost a self-reflection. You need to go back and start looking at, and I'm not a firm believer, but one of my slogans in life is take a moment, and it's about, stopping. And if you're hearing, you've mentioned triggers, or if you're unsettled, or there's this deceit, or there's this suffering or trauma, we need to stop and slow down. Life is so busy these days for many reasons. But we're all in that treadmill, and actually what's the most important person in our lives, is us. And if we don't stop and take that moment and start some self-reflection, then that journey of self-discovery, is always going to be a hard one. And so it's really wonderful to hear how your personal experiences have really triggered this journey and helping others as well. And I think it's really inspiring to hear.
I was reading a research paper yesterday, and it was about how people would actually prefer to, instead of being bored, as in not having anything to do, they would rather receive electric shocks. And I think that's that fear, like actually cracking open that egg and sort of saying what's going to come out. We push it and push it off as long as possible, because actually we're so frightened, and we sort of stand in our own way then, because we don't give ourselves that time. And I think you're quite right, Jenny, that's that taking that moment. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Priya. I'm going to move over to Chantelle now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Good morning from a freezing cold South Africa. Yeah, but it's all good.
I'm sure it's not freezing cold compared to here, but anyway.
Yeah, everything's relative, right?
Exactly. So I'm fascinated by what you do, Chantelle. You described yourself as a sex factor catalyst. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Can you explain what that means? Because I'm absolutely fascinated by this and how it relates to self-discovery.
Awesome. I'm so glad you asked that question, Penny. And it's part of the reason I've included it in my title, because I get lots of questions. And it allows me to start unpacking this process. So as Priya has rightly said, this self-discovery journey it's an introspective journey. It's a reflective journey. It's about reframing that boredom, like you so rightly said. Doing nothing is not being bored. It's that work on yourself, right? So if we want to truly know who we are, we effectively want to be able to identify our X factor. And our X factor is the thing that makes us stand out from the sea of sameness. So our X factor is standing up and saying, this is who I am. This is the thing that makes me unique. But it's not so simple to discover your X factor. Because in this journey of introspection, self-reflection, self-discovery, asking the questions, you start noticing things about yourself, like Priya said, that you're not comfortable with. And this is where this sex factor comes in. We have to talk about the things, and we have to face the things that make us uncomfortable. And this is basically shadow work. This is where the belief systems sit. This is where our trauma sits. This is where our triggers sit, our experiences, our formative experiences. Now, we might have funky ideas about our sexuality or the way our sexuality plays out, and that causes a knock-on effect in our lives. I've just finished co-authoring a book called, or co-authoring a chapter in a book called From Bedroom to Boardroom and Beyond, because how we show up in the bedroom very often echoes how we show up in the boardroom, right? But that's not everything. It's not all about sex. It's about, so I use this sex component for two reasons. One, to refer to the shadow. It might be the things that you're uncomfortable with. We need to face it. We need to make peace with it. And in so doing, we can figure out our X factor. But the second reason I refer to sex is this embodiment concept. And I was so excited to hear Macaulay being introduced earlier because that's his thing, right? And we live in the knowledge age. And my experience is in the last 10 years, I have been focused, or 15 years, I've been focused on this pursuit of self-development to the exclusion of my body. And I realized last year that I've lived disembodied. We have to embody these learnings. We can talk about NLP and CBT and triggers and traumas and therapies and all the rest of it, but unless we embody our truth, unless we embody our X factor, and we say from a mind perspective, from a soul perspective, from a body perspective, this is who I am, we're not going to be able to find that X factor. And that's step one. The second part of my work is I call myself an identity architect, because we talk a lot about self-discovery and figuring out who you are. And yes, that's step one. Get your X factor, figure out what makes you unique. But now the work begins. Now that you can stand up and say, this is me, this is what makes me unique. Now the question is, well, do you like it? What are you going to do with it? What does your future look like? So how do we architect an identity that aligns with your future vision, that allows you to create the life that you've wanted to live for so long, but you've never felt that you have that permission? And that is the thing that absolutely captivates me. It's a huge, involved journey. Does that answer your question, Penny?
Yeah. So does that mean theoretically that if the first point someone would come to you would be potentially when they're struggling in the bedroom, and that would be a warning sign that would potentially say you haven't found your X factor? Or am I reading that wrong?
No. So sometimes people come to me because they're struggling in the bedroom, but most of the time people come to me because of exactly what Priya was saying. There's a disconnect, career is not working, relationships are not working, whatever, life is just not working. I'm just not feeling like I'm showing up as myself. I'm starting to question who I am. Now, some of the questions that I ask is, describe your intimate life, describe your sexual experiences, because a lot of us have struggled with abuse or trauma or whatever it might be around sexuality. But it's not all about sexuality. I use that sexuality component to reflect the shadow self, which is the stuff that we don't want to talk about, but we have to.
And then that your mojo can shine all the brighter and the sex can be even better once you're standing in the way of yourself. And I guess that's the whole way you show up, right? If you're in touch with your inner self.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are the biggest internal blocks that you see in the women that you're working with then?
Shame. And you know, we don't actually realize it's shame. And again, this is just my journey. I've got a book that's coming out in the next couple of weeks called Phoenix Rising. And the book chronicles how I lived with chronic shame for 40 years, but I didn't know it was shame. And it came from a sexual experience when I was 7 years old. And this was the thing that created this mantra in my mind. And I went through life saying, I am broken, deviant, twisted because of what happened to me. You see, it's the story that I told myself. So it wasn't just sexual shame. It was shame about showing up at work, shame at showing up in my relationships. It impacted my relationships. And I don't think women give enough credence to the power of this thing that survives in silence.
I think that's so true.
What's really powerful in what you say is that embodiment, because as well, like, and the taking ownership. So once you've done the work and you're aware and you're discovering, it's taking that ownership and taking that forward. And I'm still reeling in my head, like, I think the word shame, what you've touched on, is huge and multifaceted and can show up for a lot of people. So I'm, still like how I resonate with that, but I don't really know how. So it's really mind-opening for me. But it's like, how do you, how has that already been embodied with you today? And how do you transform that and take that forward? And from the sex factor point of view as well, and linked to that embodiment, what's really interesting for me is Penny and I are having this discussion just before the podcast, and we've been having it now for many weeks, but it's this body image. Everyone has it, like, be it positive or negative, and it can be so shaping of how you are, and it's intrinsically linked in everything that we do, and I think that's really, really interesting. Yes, it's not just what happens like between the sheets, but it's actually how you look at your body and how you're working with your body to be the best person, the best version of yourself that you can be. I just love that connection, and it's something that not always, I've never sort of heard someone speak about it like that. So it's wonderful.
And I think when we're looking at our tweens as well, it's kind of thinking like, we don't want them to carry those burdens of shame and inadequacy and whatever else it might be that potentially our generation has been carrying for so many decades. And how do you prevent that, right? Because it's what you're saying as well. It didn't happen till much later on in your life that you were aware of these things. How can we accelerate it so that we are more aware at an earlier age? How can we support that so we don't waste time, because we're not here for very long, right?
Absolutely. So I love the fact that you've brought body image in, Jenny, and particularly with this discussion about embodiment. And I'll just share very quickly, I started my business in 2019, so I've been going about 6 years. By 2023, I was suicidal, I was obese, I had high blood pressure, and I kept asking myself the question, how is it that I can transform lives across the world? And I'm bringing a message that is catalyzing change, but I am so deeply unfulfilled and I'm so deeply dissatisfied. And it started with, yes, there was a story about what happened to me in my past. But it started with, I hated my body, hated it. And of course, because I was obese, I couldn't move this body. I couldn't relate to this body. And yeah, there were a number of things that I did, but a big part of it was learning to look in the mirror and find that one thing that I loved. And most of the time it was my eyes, and I would just look, thank you. But I would just look in the mirror and I would say, I love you, Chantelle. And I wouldn't feel it. And there was a lot of other work that I did around that. But it started with my eyes and it started spreading. And, as I did this shadow work, the weight started shifting and I started moving my body and I started learning all of these modalities and I started diving into body work and breath work and all of these things. And suddenly I wanted to. And the more I did that, the more I loved my body and the more my attitudes resolved and stories started shifting. So it's so interconnected. Each of us have our discipline, but I really like to think that I look at identity from a sort of wheel perspective. This is who you are in the middle. There's so many spokes that can take you there, right? It could be breath work, it could be NLP, it could be CBT, it could be something I do, it could be whatever. But you've got to find the spoke that's going to work for you.
Did you find, Chantelle, that you, although you're an expert yourself and you've practiced all this stuff, that you needed to reach out for help yourself from other people? Did you need that?
Absolutely. I had a life coach myself. I had a business coach. I had coaching from the mental perspective. I had body workers. I went to various sort of modalities in terms of body work. I had a breathwork coach. So absolutely. And I always say that every coach needs a coach. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're giving out, you still need to receive, right? And I'm still on this journey. So I think it's really important that it flows both ways.
And you were also saying that, you needed, I'm kind of thinking that we all need time, a platform where we just have space. Again, it's going back to what we said about Priya, but when you go to the coach yourself, you said you were working so hard that you were almost burnt out from that it's just even just having that platform and that space and that time to say, now it's unpacking me. And you do need someone else to help support that. Absolutely.
And that was, I think, the biggest component in my journey from 2023. I made the conscious decision, it's about me. It's about what works for me, what brings me pleasure, what brings me joy. No more apologies, no more excuses. It's all about me.
Well, you irradiate that energy, so thank you. That's amazing. I might get in touch.
Love it.
Right. I'm going to. Sorry, Jenny, did you want to add something?
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to, and you just touched on it again, Chantelle, but where you said, it's a will and what's your spoke. And I think that's really important for our listeners, that it doesn't have to be this completely holistic journey that you embark on and you've got every facet seen to, because that's really overwhelming. Actually, what is that point? And you said, what point can make you think, I'm doing that for me and this is for me? What element of your life can you prioritize to give some self-reflection, self-discovery and prioritization going forward? And once you feel the benefits of that mentally or physically, then I believe your mind will start to open up to, okay, what next?
So right. It's a journey.
It really is. And I think some people, I worry that because there's a big industry now of it, people think that they need to be absolutely ready to start that journey and have that and they've been like working with a coach. But I do believe that it can start with small steps, and it's what really, going back to Priya's motivation, what really do you feel needs seeing to? And if that starts with meditation or journaling, or some mindful body work, I love that body work.
Absolutely. And we've all got that wisdom within us. We all know how to do this, but our society has got so increasingly fast-paced and so IT focused and AI focused that we've forgotten how to do this. And sometimes all it takes is going outside and breathing consciously. That's a start. That's okay.
Great. So I'm going to move over to Darren now. Hi, Darren. I think this links in quite nicely the next question that we've got for you, because we're sort of talking about when do we start this sort of journey of self-discovery? How do we find that time? How do we not stand in our own way, as it were? And you talk a lot about taking responsibility when it comes to healing and growth. What does that actually mean?
Okay, so let's start with the world itself can be brutally unfair. So good things happen to people that perhaps don't deserve it. Terrible things happen to good people that don't. Yet we are totally 100% responsible for everything that shows up in our world. And that statement often comes with a lot of pushback. Why? Because people misuse or misunderstand the word blame for responsibility. So when I say that you are 100% responsible for what shows up in your life, people immediately think that I am asking them to shoulder the blame for things that they were undeserving of. In their childhood, people cheat and steal from them, people bother them and hurt them. Yet when I explain the word responsibility and we break it up, it's responsibility, meaning it's the ability to respond. Responsible is response-able. It's able to respond. And so we may not get to control very much in life, but our superpower is controlling how we respond to what life presents to us at any given moment. And so when we really own that from top to bottom, we realize that we can't control many things in the world, and we certainly can't control many of the experiences that we don't deserve. But we'll always control how we respond to that experience. Now, that leads into a deeper conversation because, as the panel have rightly said, there are lots of triggers and lots of insecurities, and like what I like to use as the holes in the metaphoric bedroom floor of your childhood, where most people have designed maps to navigate around them, yet they haven't sort of filled them in. And what life tends to do in its brilliance is reveal where you're stuck. And so life will continue to present to you the people, experiences, events, and circumstances that will reveal to you where you're still stuck and where you're still navigating around the holes in the bedroom floor, as opposed to looking at the holes, looking at what caused it, and understanding that the trauma was real and the pain was real, yet how you choose to respond to that by reframing the experience, you get to unhinge yourself from these linguistic prisons that keep people stuck. Because when you really boil it down, everybody's trauma is based on a story that they have continually running in their software and their subconscious from the experiences that were real. Yet until you can change the story and look at the event through new eyes, the emotion that is attached to the story can't change. And so I spend most of my time in that area where once we talk about the trauma, once we talk about the childhood and the experiences, then it's all about, okay, and now what? That happened as a child when it was undeserving. Yet here you are as an adult, and now you get to look at the event through a new set of eyes, through the eyes of an adult that can understand what happened, that can create a new reframe, that can put a new story to the experience, however traumatic. And again, that can come with a lot of pushback, because I'm sure you all appreciate that many people want to hold on to an identity. And we just, the former speaker, she spoke beautifully, of course, Chantelle, she mentioned identity, because you can't outperform your identity. That is core beliefs driving all your conscious behavior. And so if you want a different life from the one that you currently have, if the one you currently have is unfulfilling, you have to deal with identity. You have to go back and change the identity. And identity is what? Who you are being. It's not what you do on occasion. It's who you are being, which means what? Your beliefs, your behaviors. And you can't become somebody by doing things on occasion. It's got to come from an identity. I'll give you two examples. Oprah Winfrey, who we all know, successful multi-billionairess, she's always struggled up until recently with her weight. Her story was, I come from a family with a slow metabolism, and I'm big boned, and I see a salad and I put a kilo on. And as long as you believe that story to be true, whatever you try to negate that is going to be temporary, because your identity says, I'm somebody that puts on weight easily and I can't lose it because of this story. And then obviously Ozempic came into the equation. It started to work for her, and then she started to see the results, and then she could identify with somebody that could be slim and hot and keep the weight off. Mike Tyson's another one. He came from Brownsville, a poor kid growing up. I'm not deserving of money, lots of shame, as previously alluded to, and all his fortunes that he made, he had to make and lose 3 fortunes before he was able to hold on to his wealth. Why? Because his story was, I'm a poor kid where money's hard to come by. People who are rich are crooks and villains and tax evaders, and so I'm not deserving of this. And you can't outperform that identity. You have to go back and change who you are being at your core, where you genuinely believe what you're saying is true. Again, the affirmations that we've touched upon. If you look in the mirror, like Chantelle said, and say, I love myself, yet the feeling doesn't align with the statement, with the quote, the subconscious is going to say, bullshit. I don't believe you. There's no belief in that statement. And so affirmations themselves can work as long as you can correlate the feeling, aligning the feeling with the statement. And so a way that we can get around that is by holding something in your awareness that you genuinely do love. It could be your spouse, your mother and father, a pet, a best friend, and you hold them in that inner visualization. And then once you've got the frequency of love of that thing, then you make the quote, I love myself. And that then will align, that vibration of belief and statement will start to align. And the subconscious, as you know, it's a genie. It just works for you based on the instructions that you give to it. And so if you can start saying these things like, I love myself, I'm good enough, and it aligns with a feeling that you are holding inside in that moment, the subconscious will allow it across the critical factor and it will start to have an effect. We segued a little way away from the beginning, but it's all interconnected. It's all interconnected.
A lot of practice, though, in there, I feel. I'm wondering, like, how many times a day do I need to tell myself I love myself? For how long until that becomes, real?
That's why, for me, affirmations are a very, very slow way of change. I think that once you can have a conversation with somebody that gets it, at an advanced level about what I teach, which is responsibility, the ability to respond, and how we can let go of any shame or blame from the past through the eyes of the adult who's no longer now in a state of, let's say, existential threat. If you get it at that level, you don't need affirmations. You can change that mindset in a moment. But that's the work. It depends on how willing people are to let go of a story that's defined them for so many years, right?
But it feels to me as well, though, it's work. Like I've been told many times, do meditation, do your journaling, you can do body scans, all this different stuff. And I love it. I love it when I do it. But then the next day comes and off we go and I've forgotten to do it. And 2 weeks have gone down and I don't persist. And then I think, what's the point? And then I start again and I drop it again. So what would your advice be to people on that?
That's a good question. So for me, for instance, if you're doing work on yourself and you continually have to keep doing the work in a particular area, it means your identity hasn't caught up with what you're doing on a regular basis. So, for instance, if you ask me, do I want a cigarette? I'm not going to say to you, well, what brand is it? And who's made it? I'm a non-smoker. It's non-negotiable. It's not open for debate. I don't smoke. So if you're trying to do something and it's not holding or sticking, it's because your identity hasn't caught up with whatever it is you're trying to create. So it goes back to who you are being. So people ask, what do I need to do? Or what should I do? Or what can I do? This is the wrong question. The question is, who do I need to be to do what is necessary to have what I most want? Who do I need to become? That's what
you recommend that we start on that then?
Pardon?
What would you recommend to start that then? Because
okay. Well, first of all, you have to identify with what you want as an outcome, whether it's a body shape or whether it's a certain qualification or whether it's a certain relationship. Who do you need to become to have that? And so people will say to me, well, I want a relationship that's fulfilling. And I say, okay, well, outline your ideal partner that you would like to have if you could write a checklist. And they create a beautiful list of what he or she should look like and how they show up in the world and how they should treat them. And so I say to them, that's a beautiful list. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. Who do you need to be deserving of such a person showing up in your world? Right? Because it's all about how we see the world. It's not the world out there causing your reality. It's your perception or the meaning-making processes that you're used to make sense of the experience. And if you don't get that right, it doesn't matter what shows up in your world. You're always going to be on the side of being a victim because you don't understand that it's you that's causing your own pain and misery, however traumatic. So we always go back and do the work there.
Yeah, and I just it goes back for me. Thank you for telling me about that. I think for me, it goes back a bit to that fear again, that we have that identity that we've had our entire lives or however long we've had it. And that is what we hold on to. And actually then that request or that decision to sort of say, well, actually, maybe that's not my identity, that can be really frightening to sort of let go of who you think you are. And then with no idea of actually what you are or what you're going to become. And I mean, I had that myself from a chronic pain background that I was told, you've got to stop doing all the sport that you want to do. You've got to stop being the Ferrari car. You should now be the Ford Mondeo. You're older, settle down, change what your perspective. And for me, it crushed me to the core because I was like, this is who I've been my entire life, everything I stand for. And that request, I remember breaking down in tears because I felt like I was being asked to completely change myself and be someone else. And that was a fear as well. So I'm curious sort of how you would advise in a situation like that.
Absolutely. Well, every human being born on the planet is only born with two fears or two phobias. falling from height or loud noises. They're the only inherent fears that humanity has to deal with. However, there's 1,001 phobias and fears that we adopt as we become children to adolescents to adults, and that's all learned, as you've alluded to. Everything is learned, and that which can be learned can be unlearned. And so I feel that, first of all, you have to have the conversation with what is it that's causing you to fear, and whatever that fear may be. And then we can use a combination of NLP, CBT, deep conversations to really get into the truth of what it is that you are holding on to that's causing you to be in fear. And the old acronym that everybody uses, false evidence appearing real for fear, and everybody uses it. But if you look at the percentage of time where your fears actually came true, it's so minimal. It's up there in the 1% only. And so most people's fears are unfounded, and they are given to them by the primary caregivers who do their best to raise a healthy child. Yet how can they, when their own neuroses and phobias and fears have to come into the equation, right? Because they are only imparting what they know. And most parents, although they do the best job possible, they have to bring to the table their own ignorance. And a child who sees the world through the eyes of their primary caregivers, they have no other option to absorb all that, because most behavior is caught, not taught. And so it's irrelevant with what parents often say. They're watching everything that you do, right? And so, again, conversations about parents can be uncomfortable because children feel it's being disloyal to talk about parents who raise them. Sometimes you are taught as a child not to question what your mum and dad tell you. And that's where most of the trauma comes from, right? You alluded to earlier. 95% of who we are is created before our 7th birthday and held in the subconscious. And so if you can't get into those bedroom floor holes, those metaphorical bedroom floor holes, and fill them in, you are going to be a copy and paste of those who told you how life should be or could be or what you could become. And so my work is all about undoing all that limitation and really letting people know that, hey, you are not the product of your upbringing. You are limitless potential, clothed in the most incredible supercomputer ever developed, yet you've told me that you can't do something, which is a limitation that can be overcome. It's a linguistic prison. Every person's problem is a linguistic problem only. It's in their head as a story. It's not an absolute truth, because plasticity says that we can change everything, and we can. Whether it's breath work, whether it's ayahuasca or plant medicine, and which I've done plenty of all of that on my own journey. And that'd be something, obviously, our audience is quite young. That would be something that would have to be discussed way off camera, right? But there are so many modalities that we can use, and so many things that we can do to help us overcome this identity which is keeping us stuck.
And when would you say we can begin this journey of self-discovery? Can we say to our children at the age of 4, right, we're off on a self-discovery journey, and how would we go about doing that?
That's a great question. That's a great question. At what age do you introduce the journey of self-discovery? I think that the moment a child is able to comprehend a good grasp of the language that they speak, you can now start introducing that it's not the event in the world that's causing you to feel pain. It's the meaning that you are applying to it. And it's your responsibility to sit with that a little bit and start to ask, what am I making this mean about me? Because all the suffering comes from the introspection of how we give meaning to this event that is now unfolding in front of our eyes, right? And again, 4 years old, they won't have the ability to grasp that type of narrative, but you can start introducing this concept into their world. And the older people get, I think it's imperative that you start introducing the whole idea also that the history of your life is a fact. Whatever happened in your life happened, right? And so one of the quotes I like to use is, what happened in your life had to happen, and it couldn't have happened any other way. Why? Because it didn't. And if you can really own that from the onset, it's still going to be painful. But if you can own that, then the next statement is, and now what? We're here, now what? Was I deserving of that? No. Did it happen? Yes. And now what? Where do we go from here? How do we reframe so we can have some semblance of peace and freedom in this real estate, which is driving every emotion, every thought, every biochemical reaction, every bit of chemistry, because it's here you have to master. You don't master out there.
Yeah, and I think also having compassion for your younger self, going back, remembering what that was, saying that's how it was, and then what can we learn from that now? I'm sorry it had to happen to you potentially, or maybe it didn't go the way you wanted, but
That's
how
right.
do we move forward from there? And on that note now, Jenny, I'm going to go off and make a self-reflection corner for my children in the corner of the house with lots of cushions. I'm going to send them there instead of standing on one leg in the corner.
Like, actually, just pausing for a moment on the children. I think it's, hearing you speak down, it's like once they've got that emotional awareness and the event that have caused them to create those emotions, and that, what now, what next, you have the ability to guide and control your responses. It's very difficult because they probably don't understand it, but you can take that moment to be aware of what is triggering them to respond on that. So I think that's a really good consideration for people. And I'm particularly taking that forward after the morning I had with my 6 and 5-year-old. But also I wanted to, and I'm really, this is what, when I reached out to Macaulay, as I was talking about the discipline aspect. So, and I think from the questions that Penny asked you about, how do you start this journey? How do you instill these practices? And to your answer, from what I heard and taking forward, it's like you have to have that identity that is what you want and need, and you're not doing it because you've read online that you should do it. That someone has told you to. You have to have that self-belief of the benefit and what it will serve you. And I think that's really powerful. And again, I just want to sort of say it doesn't have to be that holistic, I know that all of this will do it. It could just be one thing. And I think that will help with, and I'd love to hear Macaulay speak more about it from the practices he teaches, but I believe that would help more with the discipline, because you're waking up in the morning or going to bed whenever you place that practice, knowing that it serves you and that it takes you forward on that journey. So that was quite powerful to...
Yeah. And yeah, I would also say that if you have a friend who drags you along to something, potentially, it might open your eyes up to something that you hadn't imagined that you might begin that journey. So maybe something as simple as that meditation hour or that yoga or something, just sort of saying, well, I'll go along to that talk or I'll listen to something different. That could also potentially start you on that journey to wanting it, right? So Macaulay, I want to move over to you now, please. You work a lot with cold exposure and breath work and movement. And as Chantelle was already saying, it's so important to sort of have that connection also with our body. So we're not just working with the mind, and you're doing it all to sort of bring people back to the present moment. In your view, how does tuning into the body help us to discover who we really are?
Thank you for that question. It's really lovely to hear. It's been such a juicy conversation, hearing everyone talking and then reflecting and thinking how I'm going to bring in what I want to say and what feels relevant at this time. And for myself at the moment, if it feels comfortable for yourself to just take a moment to close your eyes if you feel safe to do so and you're in a safe place. And just take a deep breath in through the nose, coming through the belly, into the chest, and really feeling that inhale coming in. And then exhale, letting the shoulders relax, letting your body relax, and just dropping down and just feeling. Not trying to achieve anything, just to bring awareness. I'm just going to do 2 more of those, taking a big inhale in through the nose, into the belly, into the chest, feeling that life force energy, that fresh oxygen coming through. Exhaling and letting it go, letting the body go heavy, feeling the seat underneath you, your feet underneath you, wherever you may be, whatever you may be doing right now. And taking 1 more in and really feeling and becoming aware of your surroundings inside and outside. And then exhaling and letting go. If you feel, you're welcome to open your eyes now. And I think that's the beautiful place to start, is the breath. It's with us every day, every moment. It's the first thing we do when we're born. It's the last thing we do when we die. It's with us through this entire journey. And something I really want that came through was that self-discovery, you are born onto a self-discovery journey from the day that you were born. We're constantly learning, we're constantly growing, we're constantly being challenged. And everything that happens to us in life, we want to give thanks to. Even the most challenging aspects, even the anxiety, even the stress, it all has so much to teach us, so much to bring forward for us to be able to change and grow and really understand ourselves on a deeper level. And with the practices which I teach and I do, which are ingrained into my life on a day-to-day basis, that being breathwork, that being yoga, movement, endurance running, cold exposure. Some days I wake up personally and I don't want to do these practices. I don't want to get up in the morning. I don't want to do the breath work. I don't want to move my body. I want to lay down and rest. And really, the art of a practice is tuning in and what feels good in that moment. Like, when we commit to something, it doesn't always have to be this rigidity in where we are turning up every day and we're doing said practice every day and it's going to be this way and that way. Because that's so restrictive, and you don't know how you're going to wake up every morning. You don't know what's going to surface when you wake up in the morning. So really sitting down and allowing that practice to just be whatever that may be in the morning. For example, for myself, like, I wake up, I do breath work every morning. It doesn't mean that it's going to be intense breath work. It might be half an hour, it might be 10 minutes, it might be 5 minutes. And really just allowing yourself for it to be that, allowing yourself that time to give yourself that self-loving. Because when I look at doing these practices, it becomes discipline. It means you have to show up for yourself every day. And that's not easy. It means that you're accountable. It means that you have to allow yourself to have this. And it's not in a way that you are punishing yourself. It's in a form of self-love, because the biggest act of self-love is discipline. Like, it's not easy to get up and do breath work. I can tell you it's not easy at all to get in an ice bath, to go swimming in 0 degrees water when the air temperature is -5. It comes with its challenges, which when you turn up on that day and you're really contemplating what your decisions are in life, if that's a good thing for your health. And I tell you, every time that I meet that resistance and I become aware of it and I see what kind of thought patterns are coming up, what feelings of anxiety might be rising up for me to go, actually, you know what, I don't want to do this today. The moment I step in that water, it all disappears. You get the quietness which comes in the mind, the sensations to just feel your body, to hear the birds in the background, to hear the water running by. Everything disappears and you really become aware just in that moment what's really important. You're connected with because that's all you can control in that moment, is how you respond. Because if you're flapping around and you're like quick breaths and you're wanting to like flailing around, your body's stressed. But in that moment, you have to tell yourself, I'm safe, I'm okay. And really trust yourself and trust your body, because that trust is really about going within. It's about feeling able to go within. And when we step into the cold, it then allows us to feel safe in our body. When we feel safe in the body, we want to come into the body. We want to see what's in there. We want to feel what's in there, because we want to feel more life. We all want more pleasure. We all want more joy. We all want more happiness in life. And on the flip side of that, we have to experience some discomfort, because it's in the discomfort where we really see that growth, where we really feel that growth. And when we're in the cold and it feels uncomfortable, it really makes you experience and feel joy when you're out, when you are having a nice cup of tea, when you're putting a jacket on. And when you leave the water, you carry that presence with you. You carry that awareness with you of your body and your mind, because your mind is not separate to your body. Your mind is an organ in itself and is a part of you. It's not something we need to shut up and shush. It's something we need to become aware of and be intuitive and curious about what is actually happening up here and what is happening in here. So when we get out of the cold and we're going about our day, and for example, someone shouts at us or someone puts us up in traffic, we're less reactive to it, because we're really tuned into ourselves. We're really content in ourselves. We understand that that may not be anything to do with us, and we don't internalize that. We then stand strong in ourselves. We feel confident in ourselves. It's not the showing off cool confidence. It's confidence of you carrying yourself, feeling good in your body. And really, when you are in that embodiment state of feeling happy and content within, you really feel like you can then go deeper into yourself through the means of whatever practice that may be. It doesn't have to be cold exposure. It doesn't have to be breathwork. It doesn't have to be movement. It can be whatever that may be for yourself. It can be walking. It can be having a cup of tea in the morning, looking out at the sunrise. It can be whatever that may be, in creating a ritual, in creating a practice where you give yourself permission to feel whatever needs to be felt. And really, when we allow that is then when we can have that self-discovery. It's when we can go within. It's when we feel safe to actually confront the things which may be coming up in our minds, in our body, and see ourselves from a subjective state where we're not judging, we're not trying to change, we're just coming at ourselves with curiosity, because within us all there is a small child, within us all there is a teenager. And the more that we become aware of that and see that there are other aspects of ourselves is really where we can see how we can change and grow.
I think it's that disconnect between, the body and the mind. And just now when you did that amazingly powerful, it's just 3 breaths, right? It's not taking up a lot of time. But even then, I'm aware in that moment, oh my God, I have a body. Like just that moment of like, I'm not just talking, I'm not just spouting, whatever. It's actually something else going on. And when you do body scans as well, I find that so powerful, just to remember, oh my God, this is tight. Even like the idea that, I'm slightly sort of creasing my brow, or I haven't thought about my feet for weeks. Like, what are my toes doing? What's the second toe doing? Yeah, but just that moment of concentrating on a tiny part of your body sounds so easy, but it's really illuminating. So thank you. Like, I'm going to go off and do a body scan after this, Jen.
It's so powerful. And like, I do a lot of sound healing. Like, I play the didgeridoo, I play the handpan and the Native American flute. And those instruments, when I interweave them into my sessions and into my one-to-one work, is you really feel the power, especially when I talk about the didgeridoo. You feel the power of the didgeridoo coming through you. It's a very grounding, earthy, tribal energy that comes through. And with that, you're really tuned in with the body. You're really like, wow, I feel strong, I feel good, because you can feel the energy coming through, it's powerful.
Wonderful. And I loved as well what you say, the quietness of your mind. And I wrote that I prompt is, what did I write? Where do you find your quiet? And I think that's almost the simplest step, is where in your life and this busy world that we're all entwined in, where do we find your quiet? And you said some great examples. Is it that cup of tea in the morning, looking out at something peaceful? Is it being outside? Because I don't think people prioritize that enough. I really don't. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to sit down for a rest, but for a quiet moment with my cup of tea, cup of coffee, with my lunch. But we typically have got our phones in our hands. Your mind's not going to quieten in that respect. I don't necessarily scroll on social media anymore, but if I have my phone on my hand, I'm doing. And then I remember everything I have to do. And then it's this cycle, and I don't create enough moments. I'm exploring something, essentially journaling, and I am putting the pressure on myself that I should do it daily or whatever. But I've realized I do it when I feel the need, and then I really benefit from that quiet and that, okay, I can listen to within because I need it. So I'm using this technique that I'm trying to learn. But actually, if I don't have the discipline to just sit and be quiet because I think, oh, the washing's just beeping, or it beeped 2 hours ago. I just, and my mind is still so busy. So I think that's a really powerful.
Jenny, for me, journaling does not happen. There's no point. Like, I've tried for hundreds of years, that's how old I am in the meantime. But like, for me personally, it's not happening. I can try whatever I want, but then the body scan, on the other hand, is something that I can do, or just that breathing. So I think it's also not necessarily having to be rigid in what it is. It's choose, like you said, it's the thing that is going to be manageable for you, how you can then integrate that into your life. Macaulay, I'd be really interested about when you do start working with people with potentially jumping into cold ice. I don't know where you're doing it. What is the thing that they often discover, clients are coming to you, what do they often discover about themselves that surprises you?
So my clientele, I work with a lot of high-performing people, entrepreneurs, fighters, and even the general public, but really leaning into working with a lot of the fighters. And sometimes, I'll talk about the breath a moment. When I had a gentleman I worked with recently, and I work very regular with, he's semi-professional boxer. He'll be going for a British title in the next couple of months. And one of the things he first said to me when we did our first ever journey with each other, doing the breath and me guiding him through it, he said that was the hardest fight he'd ever done. This is a man who steps into a ring for a living and punches people in the face. And he says one of the hardest things he's ever done is lay on the floor and do some breath work.
Yeah, I get it.
But when people who come to the cold the cold will always bring up anxiety. The cold will always bring up resistance. And that's because it's a natural response from us. We don't want to be getting into freezing cold water. But when we step into there, it's like a haha moment. I see it in people's faces. First 30 seconds, they're like, you know what? I think I want to get out of here. This is uncomfortable. I'm really not enjoying this. Why did I pay for this workshop? Why is this man stood in front of me telling me to breathe? I want to get out of here as quick as possible, and I want my money back. Give it 30 seconds later, and they're a minute into an ice bath, and they've got control of the breath. They've got awareness of themselves, and them smile that just comes out is just beautiful. I often say to people, especially when I'm coming to take pictures of them in the ice bath, I'll say, what's your happiest moment in the ice bath? And people will be ecstatic, smiling, talking about the wedding day when they're in 0 degrees water. And then they carry that joy out with them. They feel accomplished. They feel like they feel like everything is possible and there's no resistance in moving forward with that. And on a physiological level, like, we're getting the release of adrenaline, serotonin, dopamine. Like, when you go into the cold, you get a 530% uptake in adrenaline. It's the same as jumping out of an aeroplane. And the same as that, you get a 250% uptake in dopamine. And with that, it's the doing drug in our brain. It gives us drive to carry our passions forward, to give us energy to want to do things. It pulls us out of depression. It pulls us out of anxiety. It alleviates the suffering which we may be experiencing in the mind, and really allows us to just go, you know what, everything's okay. I feel okay. Life's good. And then people move forward and they feel like they've got the tools in their toolbox for when they need it, if they're feeling stressed, if they're feeling anxious, to be able to take back control. And really, that is it, is feeling capable to be able to look after oneself. And what you were saying, Jenny, about finding that quiet place, if you're ever looking for a quiet place, go to nature. Nature has all the answers. Nature moves at its own pace. Nature will allow you to just sit there in stillness, without judgment, without a need to be anywhere, and just sit with you through whatever may be coming up for yourself in that moment. Does that answer your question?
Oh, feeling so empowered now. I'm going to go to ice bath, right? I've got enough ice cubes in the freezer. Amazing. Like, I'm just totally inspired by that. And it seems so simple, right? It's just going back to what we've all forgotten, really. Like being, like you said, in touch with nature, and really powerful. What I would like to do really now quickly is just pose a question to all of you. And I wanted to ask, and I'll start with you, Macaulay, because you're with me right now. What is a belief that you've shed completely that's completely changed your life? So a belief that you had in your life that has changed your life by getting rid of.
Can you just repeat that for me, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So what's a belief that you've had in your life that you've shed that has completely changed your life?
The belief that I have to be perfect, that I have to be a certain way, that I have to communicate in a certain way, that really shedding away the expectations from everyone else and really just accepting myself and being authentic. And whatever that may be, however that may be, and just accepting that the right people will accept me. And if they don't accept me, then that's okay. We're not meant to be.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Chantelle, what about you?
I dropped my belief that I'm broken, but tied to that belief was you can do nothing right, because nothing I ever did worked. And of course, it was this self-fulfilling prophecy. You see, nothing works. So I kept reinforcing this belief. And when I confronted the shame, I suddenly decided I'm not broken. Stuff I do works.
And what is your new belief then that's come out of that?
Confident, empowered, worthy. That's who I am. So yeah. And everything works these days, or most of the things.
And Darren, to you?
For me personally, it was the fact that life wasn't happening to me, it was happening for me. In as much as that every event or challenge that I was faced with became an opportunity for me to grow and evolve through the pain, through the challenges, as opposed to being a victim of poor me, why me? I'm a good guy. God's a bastard. He doesn't care about me. All those stories are so disempowering. And so for me, it was about, okay, life's going to happen whether I like it or not. And if I can grow and evolve through these experiences, then I'm going to become an agent for change and power for other people who are stuck in that belief system that life is happening to them.
Amazing. Thank you. And Priya, to you?
Yeah, I think, besides the fact that I stopped saying I'm not good enough and I'm enough, the other thing that really grounds me is I don't know what I don't know. I think this has been a real game changer for me, where I look at things with just pure curiosity rather than thinking that I know why this is happening, or, assuming that something's happening because of what I've been taught all these years. So that has been really freeing for me, very liberating, like just saying that I don't know what I don't know. And I use that on my children as well. When they ask me, I said that I may be your mom, but actually I really don't know what I don't know. So I can only say from my experiences and what I've learned along the way, but I can't say for sure that that's happening, because there are many aspects of life that we really don't know why it happens. So just being humble, I would say, is what I subscribe to completely.
That links really nicely to our tween question today. And that was, how do you figure out who you really are, not what people want you to be? So Priya, is that coming back then to having humility then, I suppose?
Yes. Humility, curiosity, and just not being shy to ask questions. Like, if you don't know the answer, it's okay to ask, even if someone else might think it's silly or stupid, but you should not stop yourself from asking, because the more curious you get, the more empowered you'd be, and the less you would be assumptuous, like assuming a lot. Like, I think a lot of us go through a lot of issues in life because we assume too much, or we hold on to our perspectives too much. But there are so many different ways of viewing things. And like a lot of the speakers spoke, like Darren, about the meaning that we give to circumstances and situations. It really makes a difference. Either you personalize it, or you just declare that you really don't know, and it's not about you. It could be a projection of the other person, or it's just a situation that is here to teach you something if you are willing to learn from it. Otherwise, it's like, oh my God, why is this happening to me?
And that you're the author of your own story, right? Somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
Chantelle, what about you? Any advice for our tweens?
Follow the joy. There is something different that excites all of us, right? And especially, I talk to my adults all the time about, we need to go back to this childlike state of just following the joy and just enjoying. Because as you do that, you figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what your values are. You start creating this whole identity manifesto. Follow the joy. Don't listen to what society says is joy. Follow this joy.
Beautiful. And Darren?
Yeah, 100%. It's follow your purpose, follow your passion, whatever that may be for you. 8 billion people on this planet living in 8 billion different realities, and there is no right or wrong way to live. As Einstein says, there is no right or wrong, only thinking makes it so. And so follow what lights you up. That could be gardening, pottery, gymnastics, playing the flute. It doesn't matter what it is, but listen to your highest being and follow that purpose. Don't follow your parents' purpose, follow your purpose.
And find that purpose as well.
And find that purpose, yeah.
Makes me think of that slogan or that phrase, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't.
That's right. Henry Ford said that, and one man's meat is another man's poison. There's so many statements that will capture what we're talking about. And my favorite, I know it always impacted me massively, and it was this: to the lobster and the crab on the Titanic, the sinking of it was a miracle.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Macaulay, to you?
Dare to be different, dare to stand out from the crowd, dare to go against everything which has been wrote, because we define our own journey, we define our own trail, and it is the path less trodden which is the path which is of most fulfillment.
Oh, I've got goosebumps now after all of that. I'm empowered for the day, I think. So thank you so much to all of our incredible guests today, Priya, Chantelle, Darren, and Macaulay. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, your lived experiences, and deeply personal insights. It's conversations like these that remind us that self-discovery isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And while the journey can feel overwhelming or unclear at times, it's also one of the most empowering and liberating paths that we can walk. At The Informed Perspective, we believe that the growth happens in community. Whether you're 12 or 72, whether you're just starting to ask the big questions or you've been peeling back the layers for years, there's always more to explore, and you don't have to do it alone. In fact, research shows that being involved in community is a powerful catalyst for identity development. Meeting new people, making decisions, helping others, and sharing responsibility all play a part in shaping who we are. And that's why at The Informed Perspective, we truly believe in the benefits of an active and inclusive community and encourage everybody to get involved in their own way. #JustGiveAnHour, because small acts of community create big waves of change. We'll include the links in the show notes so you can connect with all of our amazing guests today and explore their work further. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Until the next time, stay connected, stay compassionate, and remember, even 1 hour of your time can make a difference. Thank you.